let's look at solving quadratic equations. So I want to look at solving things of the form ax squared plus bx plus c. And there's a few different ways I'm going to do this. I'm going to start with the case that b is equal to 0. The number in front of x is equal to 0. In that case, I'm going to use what's known as the square root property. The idea of this: if we know x squared is equal to d, then x is equal to plus or minus the square root of d. So I can take the square root of both sides as long as I take plus and minus. Let's look at some examples of using this. If I have an equation like x squared equal to 5, we can take the square root of both sides. We just have to do plus or minus. So I have x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 5. In other words, x is the root 5, or x is equal to minus root 5. Our next example, x squared plus 16 equal to 0. I can add 16 to both sides. That gives me x squared is equal to 16. And now I can do x equal to plus or minus the square root of 16. And we know the square root of 16 is 4. So my two answers would be 4 and negative 4. One more example, x plus 2 squared equal to 9. This one's a little bit different, but it still works the same way. The left-hand side is something squared, so I can take the square root of both sides. When I do, the left-hand side just becomes x plus 2. The right-hand side is plus or minus the square root of 9. Or x plus 2 is equal to plus or minus 3. We then subtract 2 from both sides. We get negative 2 plus or minus 3. So this means that x is equal to negative 2 plus 3, or 1, or x is negative 2 minus 3, which is negative 5. So now let's look at the case where b is not equal to 0. There will be a few ways to do this, and the first one we'll talk about is the method of factoring. The method of factoring relies on this idea that if a times b is equal to 0, then one of those things has to be equal to 0, either a or b. If I multiply two things and I know I get 0, I know I had to start with the 0 in the first place. So let's look at examples and how to use this. X squared minus 5x minus 24. We need to start by factoring. We need to find two numbers that multiply to be negative 24 and add to be negative 5. We can do that with negative 8 and positive 3. So what this tells me is that x minus 8 has to be 0, or x plus 3 has to be equal to 0, since we know they multiply to be equal to 0. We can add 8 to get that x is equal to 8, and we can subtract 3 to get x equal to negative 3 as my two answers. For something like x squared plus 9x minus 18, in order to use this property, we need to get everything on one side of the equation. So we'll add 18 to both sides to get x squared plus 9x plus 18 equal to 0. We then need to find two numbers that multiply to be 18 and add to be 9. And that works with 6 and 3. So we have x plus 6 equal to 0, or x plus 3 equal to 0. We can subtract 6 to get x equal to minus 6. And we can subtract 3 on this equation to get x equal to minus 3. So my two answers are negative 6 and negative 3.